Oh, it's time. It's 5:15. Wow.
That's why we're all staring at you.
Is it June? I don't know.
Yeah.
It is Wednesday, June 11th, 2025 at 5:15 p.m. I would like to call this meeting of the Oregon Public Library Board to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Sure. Stata.
Here.
Nelson.
Here.
Goplin.
Here.
Reese.
Here.
Bergstrom.
Here.
Beshen.
Here.
Bonsonfield.
Here.
Thank you, Laura. Is there a motion to adopt our agenda?
I would do that.
Thank you, Carlene. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jenny. Any comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
We have an agenda, thank you. Moving on to community input. Any community input this evening? Hearing none. We'll move right along to our consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from our May meeting?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Coral. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jenny. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Moving on to review and payment of available bills and accepting the financial reports. Is there a motion to do that?
I'll move that.
Thank you, Curly. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any thing you'd like to point out to us today, Jennifer?
Just there were addition of two bills that I didn't update in this packet, but I sent out to you by email and it's updated on the website packet. One for 1901 for our HVAC preventative maintenance and one for Orange Whip design for our donor book graphic design. And we just would like to pay those in a timely fashion because they're larger bills. So I'd like to add those. They were received after we sent out the packet.
Thank you.
Do we have to have a motion to add them? Or no?
Do we need to move to add them if they're in the
They're in the
current
web.
online? Do we go
Yeah, they're
put it
everywhere
as
the
posted?
public would see. They're posted. They're just not on the screen here, so I apologize for that.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Jennifer on the bills?
I do have,
financial?
I have a question about the book later, I suppose, just where it's gonna be when it's finished.
We haven't decided that, so we can talk about that later. Yeah.
Not a big deal.
Okay. So all in favor of payment of available bills and accepting the financial reports, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you, everybody. Jennifer, the library director's report.
So summer is our busiest month, and we had just under 800 visitors on Monday, so it was a very great summer so far. So a couple of things I want to highlight. You probably noticed on your way in we have a new sculpture. The one we have is featured called Learning to Fly by artist Vic Rouleau, and that'll be here for the next year as part of the Public Art Committee's work to have rotating art sculptures throughout Oregon. There's no library funding that pays for it. It's all paid for by grant funds and donations that the Public Art Committee works to receive. So we've gotten lots of comments on this particular sculpture, so we're excited to have it up front. It really fits with our library and our setting very well. Also want to say thank you to our friends of the Library Gardeners. They did an incredible job. They have a bigger team this year, and in about a week it went from dandelions everywhere to lots of places with no dandelions at all. So they were working really hard to get our mulch beds looking really great, and have been back to kind of work really hard on that, and will be helping us out all summer long. So that is really a great asset to our community, makes our property look nice, and is done at no cost to the library, which is awesome. Our summer reading program registration is available, so if you or any family members of all ages want to participate, there's programs for all ages. There's a handout in your packet with more detail on the reading portion of the program. There's also events for all ages. Starting tomorrow, we have Wesley Waffles, I believe, that will be here tomorrow at 10 for our youth. We also have some staff changes and additions for summer. Because it's our busiest time, we have a lot more things coming and going, and so we need to keep up with checking in and checking out, and then also putting things back on the shelf for other people to be able to use those things. So we have Leah Malden, who's returning as our page. She was here last summer and worked previously as a page And we have new employees, Carol Kubiak and Sandra Wallowit, who just started. One of them, Carol, will be doing the summer-only position, helping us out, and Sandra will be working with us year-round. So we're excited to have both of them work with us as well. We have just finished our performance evaluation process. So I've met with all the management team members for their reviews. So mine is the only one, will be the next one in the queue once the position description is updated for that. We spoke a little bit previously about the decision on whether to keep our current software for the library system to switch to a new software. It was decided to change to the new software, and they plan to do that by May of next year. So we'll know more as the timeline evolves, but there'll be lots of training and things for staff in preparation to make that go smoothly for patrons and staff alike. We are super thrilled to have a professionally designed draft of our donor recognition book for the capital campaign. The same graphic designer, Orange Whip, that did our campaign materials, did this recognition book, and they did an incredible job. So we have a draft that we're reviewing for typos and just anything that needs to be tweaked. And then we'll get that printed out and have available very soon. So we're excited to see the progress on that. We are down to 2 outstanding warranty items, which both will hopefully be resolved in the next week or so, which will be great to have those off of our list. And then we are expecting our Inflation Reduction Act incentive payment for the solar panels. They have a reimbursement program incentive for eligible solar costs, and we filed that in May, so we're expected to get the payment by the end of July, hopefully. Just in case you hear about this, some stuff going on at the village board level. The village board submitted some locations in the village to be considered for an EV charging station grant. They did have lots of questions about that grant opportunity, so just because they submitted it, they submitted the library as one of the possible locations. Just because they submitted us for consideration does not mean we necessarily have to proceed with that. But if us or another village facility is selected as the site, they would get more information and make sure that it is a good match for, not just the sustainability goals, but costs and requirements of the grant, that those are beneficial. And then as a library board, you would have the ultimate authority to make sure that that is something that you wanted to proceed with. The village is also going to be looking at the library impact fee. We talked about this a little bit last month, but basically it's a way that new development can pay for a portion of the cost of the new library, because we're, not just serving today's residents, but also residents that will move into the community in the future. So I expect that will be on the village board agenda, one of the next 2 agendas for them to adopt and select what that fee will be. There's a legal process by which they have to analyze costs for this building to determine what they are able to assess, and they can choose to assess up to that amount. So we anticipate they'll do that to help relieve, the burden from current residents. I'm happy to answer any questions. I also have in the packet our summer library program brochure that talks about both the reading program and then all the activities for June and July. There will be activities in August too, but June and July are featured in this handout.
Any questions for Jennifer? Thank you for everything you and the staff are doing. This is gonna be a fun summer.
Yes.
We can move on to monthly statistics.
There's not a whole lot to point out since last month, but do want to point out that we're starting to get to the point where our door counts are higher than last year. Even though last year we had kind of an influx in the first couple months because so many people wanted to see the new building for the first time, and we're kind of past that threshold. So our May door count was higher than it was last year, and we're also seeing continuing growth in our meeting room and study room usage over last year. So from 24 to 25. Every month consistently our study room usage is higher than the previous year because more people are aware of it and finding those as good resources for them to use. I think that's all I'm going to point out today, but I'm happy to answer any questions about other statistics if you have any.
Just love to see those red bars that keep going up.
Mhm.
Anybody have any questions for Jennifer on the statistics?
I'm just so surprised that still the new library cards are so high.
Yeah.
It's just, because you think about repeat users, but new library cards, like, wow.
Yeah,
still.
there's always some new library cards because as kids reach a certain age or people move into a community, there's people that need a new card for that reason. But we are also finding that a lot of people are visiting from out of town and they might live in Stoughton or a different community and they might just get a new card while they're here. And it may not be the closest library to them, but they're it's helping inspire them to use the library more in addition to using us.
So just amazing.
Okay. Any village board announcements we should be aware of?
I know that I can just comment a little bit on the EV charging stations, mostly because I had conversations with Amanda, who's part of the transportation committee, and they're looking at the grant. And part of what they're talking about is what in placing them, what kinds of EV chargers is a really important thing, because the less expensive ones take longer. But if it's gonna really charge a car up, for instance, if it was here while somebody was in the library, that would need to be a fast charge thing, and so those are more expensive. So there are a lot of things to consider there, and it's a grant application, so who knows where they're gonna end up, but it is, something that could impact the library, and probably would want one that was gonna charge a car while they were in the library. Anyway, it's interesting.
Thanks, Carly. Are there any school district announcements?
Just that we had a wonderful graduation on Sunday, and that summer school starts in just a few weeks, July 7th.
I'm going on vacation tomorrow.
But we have a record number of a lot of things happening with summer school, and it's all good. Attendance, number of classes, number of interns, the whole thing. It's a great thing for the community. So everything's going great.
Wonderful, thank you. Moving on to committee reports, nominating committee, should we just move on to the election of officers unless you have any other updates?
I don't have anything, nothing has changed since
Okay.
last month, so.
All right, so now we will move on to the nomination of officers. It's our annual meeting where we elect new officers, and per our bylaws, our nomination committee has put forth some nominations. Myself for president, Jenny Nelson for vice president, Laura Reese for treasurer, and Coral Goblin for secretary. So if we are ready to get started on that, I will say that Laura Stata has been nominated for president. Are there any further nominations for the office of president from the floor? Are there any further nominations for the office of president from the floor? Are there any further nominations for the office of president from the floor? Hearing none, the nominations of the office of president are now closed. So all those in favor of Laura Stata for president, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Say no. Thank you, everybody. I look forward to being president again for another year. Moving on to vice president, per our bylaws, it states that the longest serving board member, unless that person is president, hold the office of vice president. Jenny is the board member with the longest service. Myself and Coral are behind, and we are tied as we started in the same month. So we currently have the nomination of Jenny Nelson for vice president. Are there further nominations for the office of vice president from the floor? Any additional nominations for vice president from the floor? Are there any further nominations for vice president from the floor? Hearing none, The nominations for office of vice president are closed. All those in favor of Jenny Nelson for the office of vice president, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. The ayes have it, and Jenny Nelson is elected the office of vice president. Congratulations, Jenny. Now moving on to treasurer. Laura Reese has been nominated for treasurer. Are there any further nominations for the office of treasurer from the floor? Are there any further nominations for the office of treasurer from the floor? Are there any further nominations for the office of treasurer from the floor? Hearing none, the nominations for the office of treasurer are closed. All those in favor of Laura Reese for the office of treasurer, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. The ayes have it, and Laura Reese is elected to the office of treasurer. And our final position tonight, Coral Goplin has been nominated for the role of secretary. Are there any further nominations for the office of secretary from the floor? Are there any further nominations for the office of secretary from the floor? Are there any further nominations for the office of secretary from the floor? Hearing none, the nominations for the office of secretary are now closed. All those in favor of Coral Goplin for the office of secretary, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. Coral Goplin has been elected for the office of secretary. Thank you, everyone. Moving on to 7B is the designation of authorized signers for bank accounts.
So in general, the Village of Oregon handles all of our financial transactions, but we have an exception for 2 accounts that we hold, one at OCB and one at BMO. And those are related to the Wackman funds, which are restricted in use and were part of an estate gift. And so we just need to update our signature accounts every time we change our officers to make sure that we have 2 signatures required to do anything with those accounts. And so we want to make sure we always have 3 current officers on the signature card should something need to be done with that. In the past, it's been the president, the library director, and the treasurer as the authorized signers, and then any 2 of those 3 may conduct business. So if somebody was out of town or unable to sign for any reason, the other 2 would be able to conduct that business.
Okay, so I would be willing to accept a motion to designate Laura Steda as board president and Laura Reese as treasurer and Jennifer Way, library director, as authorized signers for the library bank accounts.
So moved.
Thank you, Carlene. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Coral. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you. Let's see, where are we? Amendment to the Oregon Public Library bylaws.
So we reviewed these at last month's meeting and highlighted them, but it does require to have any proposed changes presented to you with 10 days written notice. So this is basically the summary that we had last month explaining the changes, the same copy and language that was presented last month. So I'm not going to go into depth on any items unless you have questions. But you would be able to adopt those changes today. If you wish to change anything, because of that written notice is provided, we wouldn't be able to adopt the changes today, but we could move it to the next meeting and consider at that time to allow for those changes to be considered.
I have a question of protocol.
Sure.
As library director, I've been reading that you are considered our executive officer and that we appoint you as the board of trustees to be the director. And my question is, does that need to be renewed on a regular basis? Saying, yes, we still want you as our director? How does that work?
I do not have a contract for a specific finite period of time. So basically, you as a board could choose to terminate my employment at any point. So you get to decide who holds the spot of library director. So this body does the hiring of library director, any disciplinary action of library director, any terminations of library director that are not voluntary by that person that holds that position. So there's no renewal or reaffirmation of that decision that needs to take place because there is no contract or anything. Sometimes municipal employees have contracts for a specific time frame. This particular position does not. So basically the library director will continue to serve unless you or they decide otherwise.
I just want to be clear, I wasn't trying to in any way.
John's about to make a motion, guys.
No, that's a good question.
I didn't want to suggest that you should be in some way limited in your term, but I just wanted to reaffirm if we need to how does this go? What's the word? Confirm that we still want you, we think you're great.
I mean, we do every year when we do the review. I
Okay.
would say that has to be approved by us as a body
Okay.
before we, sit down with Jennifer.
Okay.
So on some level, we are reaffirming, I would guess.
Okay,
Maybe not in a Robert's Rules of Order way,
in a
but
formal way.
yeah, but in a practical way, we are reaffirming every year.
Okay,
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I just don't want, Jennifer, you to ever think that we don't really, really appreciate all you do. I mean,
We could vote every year and be like, no, she has to stay.
She is not allowed to quit.
it's an unending term.
I think that would be its
So
own
yeah,
rule.
unless you notify I can say the village president or the village administrator, otherwise my position will continue to be in place
Okay.
at this point, unless you wish to change how that was set up, and then we can look at that.
It was just a point of curiosity, really.
Yeah, it's a good question.
I would make a motion to adopt amended bylaws.
Thank you, Jenny. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Coral. Is there any discussion? Questions, comments?
My comment is that this is clearly a lot of work. You know, there are some things that are just grammatical, but other things that are really reworking things and really thinking about what they're saying. And I appreciate the time and energy and effort that went into being thoughtful about those changes.
Agree with you, Carly. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor of adopting the amended bylaws?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we have updated bylaws. Thank you, everyone. Moving on to the review of library board goals.
This is not a discussion item, or this is a discussion item, but it's not an action item is what I should be saying. So this is just something, this is a discussion we had last year, having just moved into a new building, with lots of excitement about the library and trying to think about how we would be approaching service in the future. So the library board, there had been a lot of goals we kind of talked about in different ways, and last summer we officially voted to adopt the goals that are bolded here. And now we're kind of in a position with the referendum not having passed, that there's some of these goals, some that don't require funding, some that ideally would require funding, some that definitely require funding to accomplish. And so I just wanna have these in front of us. At this point, I'm not necessarily recommending changes because I think these are all, some we've made progress on, some we made progress on over 2023, and we want to continue to be above 2023 numbers. Which may mean we're sustaining 24 numbers, and that's still progress. And then other things are things that I still think we should work towards, even if the funding is not available now. I think that they're goals that we should have to be competitive with other library services in the county. So at some point we may need to revisit these and may want to tweak them or reformulate them once we kind of have a better vision of what our future and our goals should look like. But for now, I just want to have them here as context for budget discussions. So when we're making decisions, we can remind ourselves of what we had wanted to accomplish and see, how we might move towards some of those things that we feel are most important. And so I'm just going to highlight each of the goals real quickly, briefly, and then if you have questions, we can talk a little bit more. But one of them was to get some secure funding for programming in our municipal budget. Historically, all of our programming is paid for by the Friends of the Library, which is incredible. But with our new building, we're hoping to add more programming. The Friends of the Library have also seen some declines in some of their revenues related to some of their programs, like the Bills Receipt Give Back program no longer being in effect, the Amazon Smiles program no longer being in effect. And so that's kind of affected their fundraising system. So that's just something that we'll be thinking about, how to continue programming levels and what level those are at, and what we want to do and how we fund that. We had also had a goal to increase the number of library programs for all ages. Again, there's funding and time that goes into planning, marketing, coordinating, hosting, all of those things. There's some ways that we can choose programs that are lower investments of staff time, and those will be things we'll be looking at. Increasing our physical collection. We always, sometimes the shelves are, in some of the popular areas, the shelves are very well used. And so we'd always like to have more, but we're still kind of below what some of the libraries in our size are able to offer. So that's kind of, we want to be competitive in those respects. And the same thing with the digital collection. Some libraries are able to kind of have more robust digital offerings than we've been able to prioritize. Our main challenge right now is staffing levels. We really want to make sure we can cover our public service desks at all times, and to do that without overextending our management team staff. If somebody is on vacation or somebody calls in sick, it's very difficult to cover all the hours without taking away from something else that needs to be done. And all those things are important. And so sometimes there's competing goals about, you might need to do 3 important things, but they're not able to be done in the way that we're able to staff. So that's kind of a challenge right now. Complete the transition to the new library. So things like the warranty list that we were just talking about. We've been doing procedures and documentation, training for staff on new workflow. So we've been able to accomplish a lot of those things, but there's still a few things that we'd like to accomplish, like documenting some of the building procedures, how to handle a certain situation that might not come up once in a blue moon, but just to have some training on some of those things. And then also we talked about having a diversity, equity, and inclusion goal. And our management team does have 4 goals in that realm that we're working on. And in the future, we can continue to identify those goals, but we might need to, kind of scale down the ambitiousness of those goals to make sure that what we're choosing to do is practical and realistic with the time that we have to contribute towards that. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but those are just kind of a reminder of what we're hoping to accomplish.
So not to oversimplify it, but realistically, that increased library staffing probably has to come, not before, but is likely part of the outcome of all of the others. Is that fair to say?
I would say that yes, to add more titles requires time to order them and process them. So to add more programs requires more staffing, and because we're already having trouble keeping up with what we're doing now, I think that's pretty much the precursor to attaining, expanding services, I guess, in lots of different ways.
I just want to make sure that we are clear with our community that the primary thing that will hold us back from our goals as a library will be whether or not we are able to staff appropriately. It's just my statement and my plea, I guess.
Yeah, I have a statement as well. I think at times like these, when there's so many things that we have taken for granted that are under attack, libraries we know are also under attack, but they are also one of the bastions of knowledge that we need to protect and not be allowed to be sacrificed. So, figuring out how we're gonna do these things is gonna be really crucial, because democracy is on the line, and libraries are some of the most pro-democracy places ever.
Any comments or questions? Thank you, everybody. Let's look at a review of the organizational chart.
So this is something that we also do every year, and just the annual meeting is a great time to do that. And let's see if I can do that. Pull that up real quick, I apologize. The capital improvement plan is very large and file size. So just a reminder, so we have the library director position, which reports to the library board, as we discussed a little earlier in the meeting. We have kind of the library operations split into 4 different departments. And each supervisor in green here has their own department that they kind of manage and take care of, but they all work together. So Laura here is our technical services supervisor and administrative assistant, and she kind of wears many hats. She coordinates the janitor that's shared with the village hall and all of his work here at the library. She supports the technical services department, which is responsible for all our new items and repair of damaged items, just organization of collection. And then she also provides support to myself and the library board with a lot of administrative duties, financial paying of bills and things like that. So she has many hats to take care of. Our youth services department is small but very mighty. So they have 2 year-round employees, and then Lori, who we are fortunate to have on as an LTE, whose summer time is paid by the village, and then the rest of the year for this year was paid by a generous donor to help us to be able to staff that busy department in the new library. Now that it has its own public service desk, it's very important to have that extra team member. Our adult services and outreach librarian is Kara Ripley, and so her team staffs the desk up here and helps adults with requests for items and information. They do a lot of technical support for faxing and printing and computer use and Libby and things like that. And then our circulation supervisor is Alicia Fisher. She has the biggest number of people. Her team is responsible for checkout and circulation things, so they help people check out and answer questions about their count at the desk. They also process items that are coming and going, so every book that gets checked in or checked out goes through that department. So that's a lot of volume coming and going, and if we have somebody call in sick, you can kind of see the books stack up in different parts of the list. So again, we talked about in summer, that's our busiest time of year, and because we have more things coming and going, we do have 2 positions that are for the summer only to help out with that increased volume. Are there any questions?
I'm just glad they're all here. I mean, we think they're awesome.
We do too, yeah, they are. A very, very talented team in lots of different respects, so.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, moving on to the 2026 library capital budget request.
This has not changed since last month, but we're here again talking about it just to make sure we have a chance before we approve it. So there's 3 things in the village capital plan. They do a 10-year planning period, and right now we just have these 3 items that have been on our list since they started doing the 10-year plan. So the first is self-check machines, and those are fairly new, so we don't need to replace those until 2030. So we have 3 machines currently, and so we would need to replace those all. There's some advantage to replacing them all at the same time. We also have a placeholder in here for a automated materials handling system. So some libraries that are similar size or bigger than us, or in terms of volume and capacity, have a sorting unit which basically checks items in automatically. So you take out that step for staff, and then it pre-sorts into buckets, so it's less materials handling for staff, which helps get things back to the shelf quicker and with less manpower. And that's something we had on the budget and the capital plan for 2030 at present. And our book return room downstairs is built to accommodate that in the future, so when and if we are able to purchase that, it's all ready to go. And the third item we have is a digital reader and printer, so that would be something that would be used for reading microfilm. So we have a lot of historic newspapers that are available to our community on microfilm. So those are the 3 items we have now. As we talked about last meeting, there are some gonna be some capital replacements, you know, for this building when we get to 20 and 30 years out and some various equipment. We'll be trying to plan those, but most of those will fall outside the 10-year period. Some of the smaller things like equipment may fall within the 10-year period, but we need to do a little more work before we have good estimates on that. So we'll be working on that for next year's plan.
Any questions or comments for Jennifer? Alrighty, moving on to our preliminary 2020. Oh, sorry.
We do, if we could have the board
Oh, yep.
vote to approve or deny or
Oh,
change that
yep,
as they
sorry
wish.
about that. Is there a motion to approve our capital improvement plan for the next 10 years?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Coral. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Leslie. Any questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. Sorry about that. Now we can go on to our preliminary 2026 budget discussion and schedule.
So, just a reminder, in the packet, we have the budget schedule. Our budget's due to the village just after our August meeting in here. So we'll be spending the next 2 months reviewing available numbers and trying to plan for what our costs are responsibly for the future and prioritizing what we'd like to put forth to the village. The village is talking about the budget as well at their meeting coming up, their next coming up meetings, and they anticipate providing some budget direction to departments to help guide the request and the expectation for what they'd like to prioritize and what level of staff wages they'd like to see requested and the like. And then they go through their process in September, and usually the final adoption takes place around the week of Thanksgiving in November. So there's some time that we'll be working on the budget, and then the village will be working on the budget and trying to kind of figure out how the pieces fit together. This meeting, we usually kind of talk bigger picture things, and then we start getting to the nuts and bolts next month, and then by August we have the best numbers that we'll have before the budget is due to the village. There's always some numbers like health insurance that come in well after our budget's due to the village, and we just estimate the best that we are able to with the information we have at that time. A couple things that are great news for this year is we have some increased revenues from our county reimbursement, and that is because there's a 2-year delay from how that's calculated. So our reimbursement for 2026 is based on our usage in 2024, and as you all know, 2024 was an incredibly busy year. And then also our costs went up, and both of those are factors in each of the county reimbursement funding mechanisms. It's very hard for Dane County to project what future reimbursements will be because there's a multitude of factors that go into that. So we don't necessarily know from year to year what's going to happen, but whenever you have a significant increase in use, that tends to affect reimbursement. So we have just under an estimated increase of $60,000. If that is approved by the Dane County Board. So there's a lot of steps in their process too, but that's our projected share. And if they scaled back, it would be from all libraries, most likely, not just a particular one. We also have adjacent county reimbursement, so that's for other counties outside of ours, where their residents are coming to the Village of Oregon to use our library. And that's basically them reimbursing us for that use. It's based on circulation, but doesn't mean they're only using circulation. They might be going to a program or using a computer, but that's just how the reimbursement has been historically calculated. We also have some increased revenue from copying, just with bigger use. They have more people using copying and printing services and collecting more revenue on those services. And we expect some of that to sustain in 2026. So it's great to have those increased revenues to kind of offset some of expenses moving forward. At least this budget year is a very good thing to see. Just highlighting some of our expenses. So staff wages and fringes, again, those will be budgeted based on the direction that we get from the village board. So they might recommend a certain percentage increase for village departments, and we will just follow suit and try to budget based on whatever they're expecting for all village participants, generally is the best way to handle that. Our largest priority, in my opinion, is staffing, and so anything we can do to add staffing, and in particular, I would like to see that youth services limited term position be extended through the whole year. I do not know how we would get through the year so far without that position, because we still have some challenges even with that, and it just makes a huge difference to have those extra 20 hours a week. So that would be my biggest priority. And there's some other solutions we're thinking about how we can handle some of the challenges of unexpected, absences and things like that, to see what strategies we can use to relieve some of the stress that those challenges cause. I noted that priorities that have been submitted for the referendum were staffing, collection, and programming. And it may be that we prioritize staffing in the request. There may not be any capacity for the village to provide funding to those other things, so we'll just have to kind of see how their process goes. But we did a pretty good job of budgeting for our expected building costs, so we are in good shape with that. There are a few things that we'll tweak moving forward, but our staffing is our biggest need. So that's kind of where we're at with kind of where we're going. We'll have more specific numbers from costs for like South Central fees and things next month to kind of start from as a talking point, but the increased revenue will definitely help our conversation as we discuss options. Are there any questions?
Because Dane County is changing out their software, is there any part of that that gets charged to the libraries or anything we'll need to track that way?
Not, you mean the library system?
Yeah.
We were told that actually is gonna be a cost savings to them.
Okay.
So that gets split up amongst member libraries, but they are anticipating it to be a savings of up to, I think they said $30,000. So we might not see a savings, but we don't expect there to be an increase related to that particular item. That's a good question.
Any other questions or comments for Jennifer? Thank you, as you're looking at all these numbers and spreadsheets and the very fine print there, so thank you for all of that work. Hearing no other questions or comments, our next meeting is going to be Wednesday, July 9th at 5:15 p.m. here in the library. Are there any requests for agenda items? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Carleen. A second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Coral. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.